The sound of the knock echoed through the small cabin. Jack paused, the worn mug of tea halfway to his lips. It was late, and visitors were rare, especially on this quiet, isolated planet. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. But the knock came again, harder this time, more urgent. Jack set the mug down, his heart thudding. He reached for the old plasma pistol he kept tucked under the table, a habit from his more dangerous days. With the weapon hidden behind his back, he cautiously approached the door. The knock came a third time, followed by a voice that sent a chill through him. "Jack Harper, I know you're in there. Open the door, or I'll open it for you." The voice was firm but undeniably feminine, carrying a strange, melodic tone that didn't match the threat. Jack hesitated. He didn't recognize the voice, but something about it tugged at his memory, a fragment from a past he had tried to leave behind. He clenched his jaw, drew a deep breath, and opened the door. Standing there was a woman unlike anyone Jack had ever seen. Her skin was a pale, shimmering blue, smooth as porcelain under the dim porch light. Her long white hair cascaded over her shoulders, framing a delicate yet commanding face. But it was her eyes that held him, bright, icy silver, locked onto his like twin blades. She was dressed in a sleek black suit that hugged her slender frame, the kind of outfit that suggested both elegance and danger. In her hand, she held a small device that pulsed faintly with light. "Do you remember me, Jack?" she asked, her voice calm yet laced with something sharp. Jack tightened his grip on the pistol behind his back. "Can't say I do," he replied evenly. "And you are?" The woman stepped forward, forcing Jack to take a step back into the cabin. She moved like a predator, graceful and precise. "You may not remember me, but I remember you. You're the man who thought he could run, who thought he could hide." "I think you've got the wrong guy," Jack said, trying to keep his tone casual. But inside, his mind was racing. Who was she? And what did she want? She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "Do you think I traveled light years for the wrong man?" Her silver eyes narrowed. "You stole something, Jack, something that doesn't belong to you, and I've come to take it back." Jack's pulse quickened. "Lady, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't stolen anything." She gave a cold, humorless smile. "Lying won't save you. You thought you could escape, but you underestimated me." Jack knew better than to deny it again. Whoever she wasn't bluffing. "If I did take something, where's your proof?" he asked, stalling for time, trying to piece together the situation. She raised the device in her hand, and a flicker of light formed into a holographic image. It showed a younger Jack, dressed in a soldier's uniform, holding a strange, glowing cube in his hands. Behind him, chaos erupted. An explosion, screaming, and fire. Jack's stomach dropped. He recognized the scene. It was from years ago, during his last mission before he disappeared. But he hadn't stolen anything. He had been framed. The woman stepped closer, her tone cold and final. "You can explain all you want, but it won't change the truth. You took it, and now you're going to pay." Jack's fingers tightened on the pistol, sweat beading on his forehead. He had hoped to leave his past buried, but it seemed it had found him. And this time, it wasn't letting go. Jack's mind raced as he stared at the holographic image. The chaos, the fire, and the glowing cube, all of it was a ghost from his past he'd tried to forget. But now, standing before him was a living reminder that he couldn't run from it any longer. "I didn't steal that," Jack said, his voice steady, though his grip on the pistol tightened. "I was framed. Someone else planted that on me." The woman arched a pale brow, her silver eyes narrowing, as if weighing his words. "Framed? Convenient excuse. You expect me to believe that after all the evidence I've gathered?" Jack's jaw clenched. "Look, I don't know who you are or what your people told you, but you've got it wrong. I didn't take anything." The woman stepped closer, her presence radiating authority. Jack resisted the urge to take a step back. She was shorter than him, but somehow seemed larger, her confidence filling the small cabin. "I am Blariah," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "An emissary of the Zirin Dominion. That cube you took isn't just a piece of stolen tech. It's a key, an artifact tied to the survival of my people." Jack frowned. "A key? To what?" Blariah's gaze softened slightly, but her expression remained stern. "Our homeworld. Without it, we're vulnerable. Dozens of factions are circling us like vultures, waiting for the moment we collapse. That cube is the only thing keeping them at bay." Jack shook his head, frustration bubbling up. "I didn't steal your key, okay? Someone set me up to take the fall. If you'd just listen." "I've listened enough," she interrupted, her tone icy. "I tracked you across galaxies, Harper. I seen the trail of destruction you left behind." Her words stung. Jack opened his mouth to argue but stopped. She wasn't entirely wrong. He hadn't caused that destruction, but his presence at the wrong place at the wrong time had made him a target. And people had paid the price. Blariah took another step forward, closing the gap between them. Her voice lowered, dangerous now. "You can deny it all you want, but I'm not leaving without that cube." Jack's mind scrambled for a way out. His plasma pistol wouldn't help. Blariah's confidence told him she wasn't afraid of his weapon. Maybe she had shields, or maybe she was just that dangerous. "All right," he said finally, raising his free hand in a gesture of surrender. "Let's say I believe you. Let's say this cube is as important as you claim. If I had it, don't you think I'd have used it by now?" "I've got nothing, lady." Blariah's eyes narrowed, scanning his face for any sign of a lie. For a moment, the tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "You're either a masterful liar," she said, her voice softer now, "or you truly don't know the importance of what you had." Jack exhaled slowly. "Had? You think I still have it?" She tilted her head, studying him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "You're saying you lost it. I'm saying I never wanted it in the first place." Jack snapped. "I spent years trying to get away from this mess." Blariah's silver eyes gleamed, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Then you'll help me find it." Jack blinked. "What?" "You heard me," she said. "If you truly didn't take it for yourself, then you'll help me recover it." Jack shook his head. "And why would I do that?" Blariah smirked, the first trace of humor breaking through her cold demeanor. "Because if you don't, I'll turn you over to every bounty hunter, galactic enforcer, and warlord looking for you. And trust me, Harper, they're not as patient as I am." Jack sighed, lowering the pistol at last. He didn't trust her, but he had no choice. "Fine. But if I do this, I'm proving my innocence. After that, you leave me alone." Blariah nodded, a hint of triumph flashing in her eyes. "Deal. But don't think for a second I'll let you out of my sight." Jack stared at Blariah, her determined silver eyes boring into him like twin lasers. He didn't trust her. How could he? She had stormed into his life, accusing him of crimes he didn't commit and threatening to turn him in if he didn't cooperate. But as much as he wanted to slam the door in her face, Jack knew one thing: she wasn't bluffing. "All right," Jack said, his voice heavy with reluctance. "If we're doing this, I need to know everything. No surprises. You tell me where to start, and I'll do my part." Blariah crossed her arms, a flicker of approval flashing across her face. "Good. I'll hold you to that." She stepped past him, surveying the small, cluttered cabin. "But first, we need to leave. If I found you here, others will too." Jack's chest tightened at the thought. He had spent years staying off the grid, using old contacts and favors to disappear. If someone else showed up, it wouldn't be to talk. He nodded grimly. "Fine. But I pick where we're going." Blariah turned to him, raising an eyebrow. "You're in no position to make demands." Jack met her gaze, refusing to back down. "You need my help, right? Then trust me. I know how to stay hidden." She studied him for a long moment before giving a small nod. "Very well. but don't think I'm letting you out of my sight." Jack moved quickly, grabbing a worn duffel bag from under the bed. It was already packed, an old habit from his mercenary days. Weapons, supplies, and a few personal items. He slung it over his shoulder and gestured toward the door. "Let's go." Outside, the cold wind howled through the trees, carrying the faint scent of rain. Jack's small shuttle was parked behind the cabin, a battered craft that looked like it had been pieced together from scraps. It wasn't much, but it was fast and untraceable, perfect for a life on the run. Larea frowned at the ship. "That's what you're flying." Jack smirked, climbing into the cockpit. "Don't judge a book by its cover. This baby's gotten me out of more scrapes than I can count." With a reluctant sigh, Larea followed him inside. The cramped space forced them to sit uncomfortably close, and Jack could feel the tension radiating off her. He powered up the engines, the hum of the ship filling the air as they lifted off. "Where to?" Larea asked, her tone clipped. Jack glanced at her. "There's a place on the outer rim, an old trade hub called Vardos Station. It's a haven for smugglers and information brokers. If the cube is out there, someone will know." Larea's lips pressed into a thin line. "And you trust these people?" Jack let out a dry laugh. "I don't trust anyone, but they'll talk if the price is right." The ship shot through the atmosphere, breaking into the starry expanse of space. Jack set the coordinates for Vardos, his hand steady on the controls. But his mind was anything but calm. "You're quiet," Larea said, breaking the silence. "Second thoughts." Jack shook his head. "Just thinking. If we find this thing, what then? You hand it over to your people and vanish." Larea's expression softened slightly, though her voice remained firm. "If we recover it, my mission will be complete. What happens to you is up to you." Jack gave a bitter smile. Comforting. For the next few hours, the cockpit was silent, save for the hum of the engines. Jack stole glances at Larea, who sat with her arms crossed, staring out at the stars. She was an enigma, a warrior with the grace of a diplomat and the presence of a queen. Whatever her story was, Jack knew it was tangled in more layers than she let on. As they approached Vardos Station, Jack felt a familiar unease settle over him. He wasn't just walking into a den of thieves. He was walking into his past, and he had a feeling it wouldn't let him leave without a fight. Vardos Station came into view like a drifting shadow against the stars. It was a massive, rusting structure, its once grand design now buried under layers of makeshift repairs and scavenged parts. The station orbited a dead planet, the kind of place where law and order were optional. Jack tightened his grip on the controls, his gut nodding with unease. "This is where we'll find answers?" Larea asked, her voice laced with skepticism, as she stared at the decaying station through the cockpit window. Jack smirked faintly. "If you know how to ask the right people, yeah. Just don't expect a warm welcome." Larea crossed her arms, her gaze narrowing. "I don't need a warm welcome. I need results." As they docked at one of the outer hangars, the ship creaked under the pressure of the station's artificial gravity. Jack powered down the engines, casting a glance at Larea. "Rule number 1. Keep a low profile. These people can smell weakness, or wealth, from a mile away." She gave him a pointed look. "I don't need your advice to stay alive." Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "Suit yourself, but try not to draw too much attention." The hangar was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of oil and metal. Mechanics and smugglers worked on battered ships, while shadowy figures exchanged whispered deals in the corners. Jack led the way, keeping his steps steady and his expression neutral. Larea followed close behind, her movements fluid and deliberate, like a predator on the hunt. "Where are we going?" she asked as they weaved through the crowd. "There's a guy I know," Jack said, his voice low. "Reinar. He deals in information, and he's got ears everywhere. If anyone knows where the cube is, it's him." Larea raised an eyebrow. "And you trust this Reinar?" Jack shot her a sideways glance. I trust him to want money more than revenge. That's good enough for me. They reached a small, dingy bar nestled between two towering stacks of cargo crates. The neon sign above the entrance flickered weakly, casting a sickly glow over the crowd that loitered outside. Jack pushed the door open, and the heavy scent of smoke and alcohol hit him like a wave. Inside, the bar was a cacophony of noise and movement. Alien patrons of all shapes and sizes filled the room, their voices blending into a chaotic hum. Jack spotted Renar at a table in the back, his reptilian features partially hidden under a hood. "Stay close," Jack muttered to Lariah as they approached the table. Renar looked up as they neared, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Jack Harper. Never thought I'd see your face again." Jack forced a grin. "Miss me, Renar?" The information broker leaned back in his chair, his clawed fingers drumming on the table. "You've got guts showing up here, Harper. What do you want?" Jack slid into the seat across from him, motioning for Lariah to sit beside him. "I need intel. Something big was taken from the Ziran Dominion. I need to know who has it." Reinar's gaze shifted to Lariah, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "And who's this?" "Your new bodyguard." Lariah's expression remained cold and unreadable. "I'm the one you'll deal with if you waste our time." Reinar chuckled, his sharp teeth flashing. "Fair enough. But information isn't free." Jack reached into his jacket, pulling out a small pouch of credits. He slid it across the table, keeping his hand on it. "This should cover the start." Reinar's eyes flicked to the pouch, then back to Jack. "All right, Harper. I'll bite. The cube you're looking for was here. Word is, it's been sold to a warlord operating in the Galdar sector. Goes by the name Kyrax." Jack's stomach sank. Kyrax wasn't just a warlord. He was a butcher, known for leaving no loose ends. Lariah's lips pressed into a thin line, her gaze hardening. "Where exactly in the Galdar sector?" she asked. Reinar smirked. "Now that'll cost you extra." Jack sighed. "Of course it will." As the tension grew, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. But there was no turning back now. The ship's engines roared to life as Jack guided them away from Vardos Station. The information Reinar had given them was solid, but it came with a warning. Kyrax didn't tolerate intruders. Entering his territory meant walking into a lion's den, and they both knew it. Lariah sat silently in the co-pilot's seat, her gaze fixed on the starry void ahead. Her usually sharp demeanor seemed subdued, as if she was lost in thought. Jack stole a glance at her, unsure whether to interrupt. "Something on your mind?" he finally asked, breaking the silence. She didn't look at him, her voice calm but firm. "I'm thinking about what we'll do when we face Kyrax. He won't simply hand over the cube. He's a warlord, not a merchant." Jack let out a dry laugh. "You don't say. Any brilliant plans?" Her eyes flicked to him, a hint of a smirk tugging at her lips. "I thought humans were supposed to be resourceful. No clever tricks up your sleeve." Jack shrugged, leaning back in his seat. "Clever tricks only work if you live long enough to pull them off. Kyrax isn't just dangerous, he's paranoid. His stronghold will be fortified, and his men will shoot first and ask questions never." Lariah nodded, her expression turning serious again. "Then we'll need to rely on more than brute force. I can handle myself in a fight, but we'll need to be smart." Jack arched a brow. "You? Handle yourself?" "I don't doubt it, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. Subtlety is the name of the game." As they approached the Galdar sector, Jack's ship's scanners lit up with activity. A dense asteroid field surrounded the sector, providing natural cover for Kyrax's operations. It was the perfect hiding spot for someone who didn't want to be found. "Here we go," Jack muttered, tightening his grip on the controls. "Hold on. This might get bumpy." Lariah glanced at the monitor. "Are you sure your ship can handle this?" Jack smirked. "You'd be surprised what this old girl can do." The ship weaved through the asteroid field, narrowly avoiding collisions as Jack expertly navigated the treacherous terrain. Loraya watched, her respect for his skills growing despite herself. Finally, they broke through the field, and Kyrax's stronghold came into view. The fortress was a hulking structure built into the side of a massive asteroid, bristling with turrets and heavily armed ships patrolling the perimeter. "Impressive," Loraya said, her tone neutral, "but not impenetrable." Jack frowned. "That's what worries me. The easier it looks, the harder it usually is." He brought the ship to a halt just outside the stronghold's scanner range. "We can't go in guns blazing. If we're going to do this, we need a plan." Loraya stood, her movements deliberate. "Let me do the talking. Warlords respect strength, and I have no intention of showing weakness." Jack raised an eyebrow. "And if talking doesn't work?" Her silver eyes gleamed with determination. "Then we improvise." Reluctantly, Jack nodded. He didn't like walking into a trap, but he didn't see another choice. He activated the ship's comm system, sending a message to the stronghold. "This is Captain Jack Harper. We're here to negotiate with Kyrax." A crackling voice responded, rough and hostile. "State your business, or we open fire." Jack glanced at Loraya, who stepped forward and took the microphone. Her voice was steady, commanding. "Tell Kyrax I have information he'll want. Information worth more than all the credits in his vaults." There was a long pause, followed by a grudging reply. "You have 5 minutes to land. Don't try anything stupid." Jack exhaled slowly, his hands gripping the controls. "Here we go." As they descended toward the landing pad, Jack's instincts screamed at him to turn back. But Loraya's calm resolve was unshaken, and he had to admit, if anyone could face down a warlord, it was her. The ship touched down with a metallic thud, and the ramp lowered. Jack and Loraya stepped out, surrounded by armed guards. Kyrax's men looked as ruthless as their reputation, their weapons trained on the newcomers. Jack whispered, "This is a bad idea." Loraya didn't flinch. "Trust me." As they were escorted into the fortress, Jack couldn't help but feel they were walking straight into the jaws of the beast. The fortress was cold and dimly lit, the air thick with the metallic scent of machinery and oil. Armed guards flanked Jack and Loraya as they walked through the winding corridors. Jack's pulse quickened with every step. He had dealt with dangerous people before, but Kyrax was in a league of his own. Loraya, on the other hand, walked with unwavering confidence. Her head was held high, her silver eyes scanning their surroundings like a hunter sizing up her prey. Jack eyed her calm. He wasn't sure if she was brave or just hiding her fear well. The guard stopped in front of a massive door, its surface etched with scars from battles long past. One of them pressed a panel, and the door slid open with a heavy groan. Inside, Kyrax awaited. The warlord sat on a raised throne made of twisted metal, his hulking figure draped in a patchwork of armor. His skin was a dark, mottled green, and his glowing red eyes seemed to pierce through anyone who dared look at him. A jagged scar ran down his face, cutting through one of his eyes, now replaced with a mechanical implant that hummed faintly. "Well, well," Kyrax growled, his voice deep and gravelly. "Jack Harper, I've heard of you. A scavenger, a liar, a thief." His gaze shifted to Loraya. "And you? I don't know who you are, but you have the look of someone who thinks they're important." Loraya stepped forward, unbothered by his taunts. "I am Loraya, emissary of the Ziran Dominion. I am here for the artifact you recently acquired." Kyrax leaned forward, his lips curling into a smirk. "Ah, the cube. So, that's what this is about." He glanced at Jack. "And you're working for her now." "Never thought I'd see the day." "I'm not working for anyone," Jack said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "We're here to make a deal." Kyrax chuckled, the sound like grinding metal. "A deal? Do you know how many people have tried to make a deal with me? Do you know where they are now?" Jack swallowed hard, but Loraya didn't flinch. "We're not here to waste your time, Kyrax," she said, The cube you have is more valuable than you realize. If you hand it over, the Dominion will reward you generously. Kyrax's amusement faded, replaced by a scowl. You think I need your rewards? I took that cube because it's powerful. Power is the only currency that matters out here. Lurea's gaze hardened. And that power will destroy you. The cube is unstable. If you keep it, it will draw enemies you cannot handle. The room fell silent. Kyrax stared at her, his red eyes narrowing. Then he threw his head back and laughed. You think I fear enemies? Let them come. This cube is mine, and I'll use it as I see fit. Jack stepped in, his voice calm but firm. Kyrax, listen. If the cube's unstable, it could take out this entire fortress. And if that happens, no one will remember how powerful you were. They'll remember how stupid you were for keeping it. Kyrax's laughter died, and he fixed Jack with a cold glare. You've got a lot of nerve, Harper. I should kill you where you stand. Lurea stepped closer, her presence commanding. Killing us won't solve anything. You have the cube, but do you even know how to use it? Do you even know what it's capable of? Kyrax's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Lurea pressed on. Give it to us. Let us take it off your hands before it brings more trouble than you're prepared for. For a long moment, Kyrax said nothing, the room heavy with tension. Then he leaned back in his throne, a wicked smile playing on his lips. All right. You want the cube. Fine. But it's going to cost you. Jack frowned. What do you want? Kyrax's eyes gleamed with malice. There's a rival warlord, a thorn in my side. Take him out, and the cube is yours. Jack's stomach sank. You're serious. Kyrax's grin widened. Deadly serious. Do this for me, or get out of my sight. Lurea exchanged a glance with Jack. Neither of them liked the idea, but it was clear. Kyrax wasn't giving them a choice. Jack's hands were clenched into fists as he and Lurea were escorted out of Kyrax's throne room. The warlord's smug grin was still fresh in his mind, and the weight of his demand pressed heavily on his chest. We can't do this, Jack muttered, his voice low but sharp as they walked through the dim corridors. Taking out a rival warlord. That's suicide. Lurea kept her pace steady, her silver eyes forward. We don't have a choice. If we refuse, Kyrax will either kill us or hold onto the cube until it destroys everything in its path. Jack exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. So what's the plan? Genius. Walk into another warlord's fortress and ask nicely. She stopped suddenly, turning to face him. Her voice was calm but firm. No, we don't walk in unprepared. We use strategy. If this rival is a threat to Kyrax, they'll be cautious. We exploit that. Jack's brow furrowed. Exploit how? Lurea leaned closer, her tone lowering. We make them believe we're there to negotiate. Gain their trust, then take them out before they realize what's happening. Jack shook his head. That's a lot of moving parts, Lurea. One mistake, and we're both dead. Do you have a better idea? She shot back, her tone cold but not unkind. Jack didn't. He hated that she was right, but they were out of options. With a heavy sigh, he nodded. All right, but if this goes sideways, I'm blaming you. They spent the next few hours in Jack's ship, going over every detail of their approach. The rival warlord, Zorvac, was known for his paranoia and his obsession with controlling resources in the Galdar sector. Unlike Kyrax, who ruled with brute strength, Zorvac relied on cunning and manipulation. His stronghold is heavily guarded, Lurea said, studying the holographic map of the area. But his greed will be his weakness. We offer him something he can't resist. Information about Kyrax. Jack frowned. You want to pit them against each other. She nodded. Exactly. If Zorvac believes Kyrax is planning to attack, he'll lower his guard to prepare. That's when we strike. Jack rubbed the back of his neck, skepticism etched on his face. And what happens when Zorvek realizes we lied? Luraya's gaze was steely. He won't live long enough to. Jack swallowed hard, unsure if her confidence was comforting or terrifying. The journey to Zorvek's territory was tense. Jack's ship slipped through the asteroid field like a shadow, avoiding patrols and scanner suites. When the massive bulk of Zorvek's fortress came into view, Jack couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. "This place is a fortress," he muttered, his fingers tightening on the controls. "Are we sure about this?" Luraya glanced at him, her expression unwavering. "Trust me." Jack gave a dry laugh. "That's what you said last time." The ship landed in a small docking bay, and a group of armed guards met them as they disembarked. Zorvek's soldiers were lean and menacing, their weapons sleek and high-tech, compared to Kyrax's brute force approach. "We're here to speak with Zorvek," Luraya said confidently, her voice cutting through the tense silence. One of the guards stepped forward, his sharp, reptilian features twisting into a sneer. "And who are you to demand an audience?" Luraya's expression didn't falter. "We have information about Kyrax. If you want your master to survive his next battle, you'll take us to him." The guard hesitated, then motioned for them to follow. As they were led deeper into the fortress, Jack leaned closer to Luraya, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're playing with fire." She didn't look at him, her eyes focused ahead. Sometimes fire is the only way to fight fire. Zorvek's throne room was less imposing than Kyrax's, but no less dangerous. The warlord himself was a wiry figure, with piercing yellow eyes and a cruel smile that never quite reached them. "So," Zorvek said, his voice smooth and mocking, "you've come bearing gifts of knowledge. Tell me, why shouldn't I kill you and take what you know?" Luraya stepped forward, her tone calm and measured. "Because you need us alive to ensure Kyrax doesn't outmaneuver you. He's planning something, and we can give you the details." Zorvek's eyes narrowed, his curiosity piqued. "Go on." Jack's heart pounded as Luraya spun her web of half-truths, weaving a tale of betrayal and hidden forces. He could only hope that her gamble would pay off, or at least buy them enough time to figure out how to survive. The tension in Zorvek's throne room was thick. Jack could feel the eyes of Zorvek's men on him, cold and calculating. He glanced at Luraya, who stood poised in front of the warlord, her voice steady as she weaved her story. She made it sound convincing, but Jack knew how easily things could go wrong. Zorvek leaned back in his throne, his yellow eyes narrowing as he processed her words. "So, Kyrax plans to strike first. And you offer me this. Information in exchange for what? Your lives." Luraya didn't hesitate. "No. In exchange for the chance to defeat Kyrax, we'll help you prepare for what's coming. But we need your trust." Zorvek's cruel smile twisted into something darker. "Trust is not freely given. What exactly makes you think I would give you the chance to betray me, as you claim Kyrax plans to do?" Luraya stood tall, unflinching under his gaze. "Because we're your best chance at survival. Kyrax's power isn't just in his strength, it's in his alliances. If you can take out his support, you weaken him. And when he's weak, you strike." Zorvek's fingers drummed softly on the armrest of his throne. He seemed to be considering her words. The room fell silent, broken only by the distant hum of machinery and the occasional rustling of soldiers. Jack tried not to let his nerves show, but every second felt like it was drawing them closer to the edge of a cliff. Finally, Zorvek spoke. "And if you're wrong," his voice was a low growl, "if Kyrax catches wind of this little plot." "We'll be ready," Luraya replied calmly. "And if it comes to it, we fight. But the odds are in your favor if you strike first." Zorvek's grin returned, sharper than before. "You have a lot of nerve. I like that." He stood up, his heavy footsteps echoing in the room as he walked toward them. "Very well, I'll consider your offer. But remember, if you fail me, I won't hesitate to kill you both. And then I'll take what I want from Kyrax." Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to nod. Understood. Zorvak waved his hand dismissively. Leave me now. I need time to think. As they turned to leave, Laraya's posture remained calm and collected, but Jack could feel the tension rolling off her. The moment they were out of the throne room and into the corridor, Jack couldn't hold back any longer. You're playing a dangerous game, he muttered, his voice low. Laraya glanced at him, her expression unreadable. It's the only game we can play. You're trusting him, after everything? Jack asked, his voice thick with disbelief. Zorvak is a warlord. He's not exactly known for keeping his word. I know, Laraya said quietly, but if he believes Kyrax is a bigger threat, we might have a chance. If we take out the right pieces first, Kyrax's empire will crumble. Jack ran a hand through his hair, his nerves on edge. And if we're wrong, if we've miscalculated, what then? Laraya's gaze softened just for a moment. Then we fight, together. Jack gave her a sharp look. I'm not a soldier. I'm not looking for a fight. I didn't ask you to be, she replied. But when the time comes, I know you'll fight, because I'm not walking out of this alone. Her confidence was unshakable, and Jack couldn't deny that it gave him a sense of reassurance, though only just. They were in too deep now to back out. The choices they made in the next few hours could change everything, or it could be their last mistake. They walked in silence for a while, the hum of the fortress surrounding them like a quiet, ominous drumbeat. Do you have a plan if Zorvak doesn't come through? Jack finally asked, breaking the quiet. Laraya's eyes met his, and she gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile. I always have a plan. Jack couldn't help but be impressed. All right, let's hope this plan works. As they made their way back to the ship, Jack felt the weight of what lay ahead. They were on the edge of something dangerous, but there was no turning back now. They had a deal with Zorvak, and the fate of the cube, and their lives, rested on their ability to outsmart both Kyrax and the warlord who had just agreed to help them. The hours between their meeting with Zorvak and the impending attack on Kyrax's stronghold passed in a blur. Jack and Laraya spent most of that time preparing, analyzing everything they knew about both warlords. Jack was restless, pacing the small cabin of the ship, constantly checking and rechecking their supplies. Every minute that passed seemed to add more pressure, until the weight of the mission felt like it was crushing him. Laraya, on the other hand, was calm as ever. She sat at the ship's console, reviewing the map of Kyrax's fortress once again. Her focus was unshakable, and Jack couldn't help but feel a twinge of admiration. No matter how dangerous the situation became, she never wavered. Are you always this calm under pressure? Jack asked, trying to distract himself from the tension building in his chest. Laraya glanced up from the map, giving him a small smile. I'm not calm. I'm focused. There's a difference. Right, Jack muttered, leaning against the console. Just don't leave me behind when the action starts. I won't, Laraya said, her voice steady. We work together, or we don't survive. There's no middle ground. The thought hung in the air like a cloud of inevitability. They had no choice but to trust each other completely, no matter the cost. As the hours turned into minutes, the ship approached Kyrax's stronghold. Jack could see the towering walls of the fortress in the distance, the heavy artillery mounted on every corner, and the patrol ships circling like vultures. The fortress looked impenetrable, but Jack wasn't backing down. They had one chance to get in, and he wasn't going to waste it. Ready? Laraya asked as she stood beside him, her voice calm, but her posture tense with anticipation. As ready as I'll ever be, Jack replied. Let's just hope Zorvak's information was worth something. Laraya gave a quick nod, then opened a comm link to the warlord. It's time. We're ready to begin. A crackling voice came through the speakers. Good luck, Laraya. Remember what we agreed. Don't fail me. Don't worry, she replied, her eyes sharp. This will be the end of Kyrax. The ship descended silently toward the landing bay. The sensors were offline to avoid detection, and every movement was calculated to minimize the chance of a trap. As they touched down, Jack felt his heart race. This was it. There was no turning back. The ship's ramp lowered, and they stepped out into the shadows, blending into the fortress's dark corridors. The smell of metal and dust was heavy in the air, and the only sounds were their quiet footsteps echoing through the vast, empty space. Kyrax's men had no idea they were here, and Jack intended to keep it that way. Loraya led the way, her movements fluid and confident as she navigated the halls. Jack followed closely behind, every sense alert to any sign of danger. The entire fortress felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, though the corridors remained empty. Almost there, Loraya whispered, her voice barely audible. They'd reached the central chamber, where Kyrax would be waiting. The door was guarded, but Loraya moved with precision, taking out the two guards silently before they even had a chance to react. Inside, Kyrax stood at the center of a large control room, surrounded by his loyal soldiers. He turned slowly, his mechanical eye flickering as he recognized them. "I knew you'd come," Kyrax said, his voice dripping with menace. "But I didn't expect you to come with such arrogance." Loraya didn't flinch. "It's over, Kyrax. You're finished." Kyrax laughed, a sound that echoed off the walls. "You think you can take me down? You're just a girl and a fugitive. What makes you think you can defeat me?" Jack stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "Because we have something you don't, unity. And right now, that's more powerful than anything you can throw at us." Kyrax's eyes narrowed, his hand twitching toward the weapon at his side. But before he could act, Loraya struck, disarming him with lightning speed. The soldiers around them hesitated, uncertain, but Loraya's presence was commanding. She had already taken control of the room. "Now," Loraya said, her voice sharp and commanding, "you're going to surrender. And we're taking that cube." Kyrax snarled, but he knew there was no escape. The cube was his only leverage, but it wasn't enough to save him now. As the warlord's guards lowered their weapons, Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. The fight was over. They had won. But even in victory, there was no celebration. The weight of their actions hung heavy. "You'll regret this," Kyrax spat, his voice full of hate. Loraya stepped forward, her eyes unwavering. "I doubt it."